FP1 and FP2 is now complete in Melbourne. We do have a little bit of a pecking order, and in this video, I'm going to run you through everything that you need to know what happened on Friday in Melbourne, Australia. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Martin. I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. Let's get straight into it because there's a lot of ground that we need to cover. And I was really surprised in the initial phases of FP1 just how much grip the track was offering. The cars were absolutely flying out there. It was obviously dry. We've got the new cars, more downforce, etc. We've got the track widened in a few places, notably turn 6 and turn 3 as well. So it was just interesting to see how quickly the guys could get on with it. But that's not to say that the street circuit rule doesn't apply. And we're going to get on to Ollie Bearman, who broke the street circuit rule in a minute. Like I said in the preview, I still think that this qualifying session is going to be one of top speed / aero efficiency because turn 6 is so fast, it extends that straight on the run down to 9 and 10. Top speed is going to be super important. And it asks the question as well, do you need to be changing the setup between qualifying or for qualifying for a rainy race on Sunday? I'm going to answer that question in this video as well. So let's talk about FP1 here. I'm going to start with Red Bull. And what I was looking for in the first stages of practice 1 was who's that driver that's going to explore the track limits, because there's plenty of exit curbs available. That's the exit of turn 1. There's an exit curb available. Exit of turn 6. There's an exit curb available. Exit of 9 and 10. Exit of 10. There's an exit curb available. And the final corner as well. Who's going to be the one that just like starts to ask those questions of the track and has a look around? Actually, it was Liam Lawson on the exit of turn 10 who was the first one exploring that part of the track before any of the other drivers, and didn't really get a favorable outcome there on the exit of turn 10. Kind of bumped the car a little bit. We saw a Williams go over there and some pieces flying off as well. So that's what your track walk is for, guys. You really need to walk the track the day before and get down like on your knees, on your stomach, have a look at the curbs and just try to get a feel for how the car would react over such an exit curb if you were to go over it. And when you do go over it in the first instance, just go over it slowly and just like feel if it's going to be something helpful or not helpful. I don't think it helped Liam, but good kudos to him for exploring the track. But then he touches the wall on the entry to turn 9 as well. So kind of like two, not mistakes there, but two like areas of exploration at 9 and 10 for Liam that just showed me that he was probably a little bit nervous / anxious just to get out there. I could tell. I'll be interested to see what he has to say after the practice session. But I feel like he was just really nervous and anxious. And what I would say to Liam is like, just settle in. Like you don't need to, in the first 5 minutes of FP1, you don't need to prove anything to anyone at that stage. Just go around, play your way into the crease. It's never been more important than ever in Melbourne, in round 1, in a street circuit, etc., on a dusty track and so on. So who was the first one to explore turn 6, the exit of turn 6? It was Maximilian Verstappen, and it looked like he had heaps of grip there. He did dip like the front left on the exit of turn 6, and I'll bring up some pictures as we go through. But it didn't look like it upset the car too much. I'm a big fan of having a gravel trap, having a well-defined boundary on the exit of turn 6, as opposed to, extra runoff or grass or AstroTurf, etc. I just think it makes for a more pure, more organic racetrack. Yes, there is some gravel coming onto the circuit, but that reminds me of the karting days. It's just someone goes off, there's a bit of gravel. It's not the end of the world. But Karun made a good point in commentary that if drivers continue to run over that and there's enough gravel being brought onto the track in the race or qualifying, for example, it could be safety car / red flags. Now, maybe not in the race because there's going to be rain. We'll get onto that in a little bit later. So Liam Lawson and Max exploring the track first, not getting that favorable outcomes. It was interesting to see George Russell complaining initially of understeer at turn 9 and 10. And this has been a theme so far, guys. Turn 9 and 10, like being super important corners here. George Russell complaining understeer in turn 9 and 10, saying, yeah, there's a lot of understeer. And the engineer correctly coming on the radio saying, George, your high-speed differential is available to you. You want to change that and give that a go through turns 9 and 10, seem to have cleaned it up. Now, following on from the testing in Bahrain, and we spoke about Kimi Antonelli trying to find a braking balance into that turn 9 and 10 in Bahrain, braking, turning, decreasing radius corner. There's a theme there that both Mercedes drivers are not fully leveraging the tools that are available to them, and it's not their first instinct and first reaction when something is not right. Rightly so. If George had a bit of understeer in 9 and 10 chicane, go for the high-speed diff, pull it down a click or two. That's available to you at all times, at all ranges, by the way, low speed, medium speed, high speed, off throttle, on throttle. You can control the differential at all phases. It's just interesting to see that it wasn't his first thing. And with Kimi Antonelli not finding the braking setup into 9 and 10 in Bahrain, we're talking about engine braking, brake balance, brake shape, brake migration, all that sort of thing. He wasn't able to find a setup there as well. So I think Mercedes could do with just not teaching, because the drivers are aware, but just reminding them, hey, these are the tools you have available and they're going to help you dig you out of trouble. That should be your first point of contact. So it was interesting to see that George needed perhaps some reminding of that. All right, let's talk about McLaren briefly. Now, we spoke about the over rotation that they were getting in the third day in Bahrain. We talked about that on the live stream as well yesterday. And it was interesting to see that the McLaren wanted to swap ends again in the hands of Oscar Piastri at turn 6. He turns into turn 6, and then the back starts to just over rotate and come around. He has to put an armful of opposite lock in and try to correct for that. So the McLaren's still with a lot of excessive rotation in that car. There's an argument to say that they could dial out a bit of front wing, find a little bit more top speed, and just find a more secure, stable balance. In the race, that's going to chew through rear tires again, like we said in the live stream. So Oscar Piastri demonstrating the over rotation of the McLaren. It's important, guys, that we understand the track requirements and the car characteristics and try to marry those two up. In Melbourne, we're looking for top speed, we're looking for stable front to rear balance, and we're looking for traction. Those are the things that we're looking for. Now, the McLaren strength is that mega front end grip, and that's only really helpful in long corners, like we had in Bahrain, like we might have in China. Malaysia had a lot of long corners, Netherlands, Hungary, etc. That's when that strength is going to come through. Otherwise, we're just here in Melbourne, we're looking for top speed and traction. So we're going to jump into the speed traps in a minute and have a look and see what was going on there. All right, let's talk about Ollie Bearman. So he broke my golden rule of street circuits. We spoke about this exact thing yesterday. Let's talk about approach to street circuits. And that approach is that you need to complete the weekend entirely from start to finish. And you need to build a weekend on solid platforms, solid foundations. And it applies to Melbourne. It applies to all of the street circuits. Why? A mistake is costly. If you go off in Melbourne, like a big off at turn 9 and 10, the fast chicane, or turn 1 or turn 3, you're in the wall. Your session is over. The mechanics have got to rebuild the car. Your confidence is down. You missed out on information. You missed out on data. You missed out on knowledge. Meanwhile, your teammate is pounding around there and getting all of that knowledge, getting all that data, getting all of that information. You're now behind in all areas, including confidence. That's why you need to build the weekend on solid foundations. Let the track clean up, try a few things, come home, FP1, have a shower, have something to eat, do your FP2. That's what I'm looking for in a street circuit. If you just build a weekend, bring the car home on Sunday in the wet, like there'll be trophies and points for you. I can guarantee you that. We said that on a street circuit, you just want to play your way into the crease. You just want to build up to it. It's FP1, it's Melbourne, it's 2025 first round. Just like take the professional approach, complete the day, complete the weekend, and go from there, sort of thing. So it's something we've been saying for a while on this channel, is that the rookies don't have that mindset built into them, and that's the first thing. And there's no one to tell them that. You had the likes of Colapinto crashing in Baku. You had Antonelli in the wall in Monza. You've got Bearman in the wall now. And it's critical. You're missing out on practice. You're missing out on data. You're missing out on information. It's just from that position, the chance of you having a good weekend is very slim. Possible, but still slim. Lucky for Ollie, there's probably some opportunities on Sunday with the rain. But that's something that, A, you should already be on top on. B, you're going to need to amend for and put that fire out very quickly. And C, that's going to have mental implications now. Am I good enough? Did I make a mistake? What am I doing? Of course, now you're going to ask yourself all those questions. You don't want to be in that place in the first instance, let alone be needing to resolve for those self-doubt and self-confidence issues. Anyway, you guys know you've been following the channel for a while. You know my approach to street circuits. Build yourself a weekend on good foundations. Now, the mechanism for the crash was the direction change 9 and 10. Once again, high speed direction change when you got left steering lock, turning that into right steering lock, a lot of oversteer on the entry to turn 10. He's corrected for it and then, had to use all of the track and more, found himself in the wall. Now, look, Carlos Sainz had a mega session in first practice. And look, I just wanted to call out what a mega job Carlos is doing, what a very professional job. He's changed teams so many times now that he's adaptive. He knows how to fit into a new team. He knows like what are the most critical things to focus on, what things are important, not important, how to get comfortable quickly. He knows about all those things and he's showing his excellence. But I think more crucially, he's showing how good a car the Williams was, and can be in the hands of a good driver. Now, a lot of people rave on about how good Alex Albon is. I've never really been convinced of it, like how good he is. And when the likes of Franco Colapinto can come in and get points in Austin and Baku immediately, that says more about the quality of the Williams car than it does about Franco, for example, who we went on to see made a lot of mistakes thereafter. So what I'm trying to say is, in the hands of a good driver, that Williams has never really been a bad car, in my opinion. So it's good to see Williams and Carlos doing well. It's good for Carlos, obviously. I'm happy for him, and I hope it works out for him. I hope he gets some points this weekend. If he could get in the top 6 or top 8, I think that would be an excellent result for Carlos, underlining his maturity, his excellence, his quality, and his professionalism. George Russell also had an error in the first practice session on the exit of turn 3, just trying to find as much entry track available on the entry to turn 4 to carry the most speed, get your foot down harder, open the steering earlier, and so on. Just dips the right rear on the grass, and it nearly puts him in the wall, guys. So this is the thing. It's very close, and it's just interesting to see the rookies go over that edge and end up in the wall and completely make a mess of the car. And all the professionals like the Max, the Oscars, the George, just having those little slides, but kind of keeping the car in one piece, very fine line between the two. Anyway, George had a mistake in the first practice session there. It was towards the latter stages of the practice session, so he already got the running in and that sort of thing, so it wouldn't have been a big deal. Even if he took a front wing off, there's no dramas for George Russell. Let's have a look at the results and the top speeds together as well. So here's the results after the first session. So it was Lando that ended up topping it. Carlos held it for most of the session there with the 17.4. These are quick lap times, guys. So McLaren are up there, Leclerc's up there, Carlos is up there. It was interesting in this session to see the split of the teammates, like Russell, Antonelli, big difference in how those two got on. Verstappen, Lawson, big difference in how quickly those two got on. Leclerc, Hamilton, big difference in how those two got on as well. So it was just interesting to see the new guys, the Hamilton, Antonelli, and Lawson, down in 12, 14, 16, and the guys that are familiar with the car, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, etc., just finding their way into the top 8 much quicker, much sooner. And, Piastri and Norris obviously both being up there because Piastri is pretty well bedded into that team. So it was definitely like, an FP1 in the truest sense of the word. But here's what I want to focus on, the top speeds, guys, in this session. And I'm just going to go next image so that you guys can see it. And zoom in, hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. I've just sorted them. So it was Verstappen with the upper hand in terms of top speed. Both McLarens up there and both V-Carbs, Visa Cash App, Racing Bulls up there as well. So look, this is the first session. I want to see how this evolves in the second session. If you were Ferrari, there's an argument to say you need to pull a little bit of wing out as well. Likewise, Mercedes, but McLaren looking strong in terms of top speed. Red Bull looking strong in terms of top speed as well. But just generally speaking, it's pretty close in, anything 321 and onwards. It's pretty close. It's really also these guys in the bottom, the Kick-Saubers and the Haas cars that really need to work on their top speed and definitely have probably got it wrong in terms of, how much downforce they bring to this weekend. All right, let's have a look at the FP1 telemetry comparison. For this one, I'm going to have a look at Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon because I think Carlos did a mega job. So hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. This is FP1, Alex Albon 17.7 and Carlos is 17.4. And I'm just curious to see where Carlos was getting the upper hand. So we've got the delta for reference here. And anytime it goes up, that's in Carlos's favor. And anytime it goes down, it's in Alex's favor. Really interesting what we see is that it but at one point in the lap, goes into Alex Albon's favor through turns 9 and 10. Remember in the live stream yesterday, the preview, we spotted this turns 9 and 10 where Max destroyed Carlos for pole position last year in turns 9 and 10. So the massive delta jump there, the massive speed difference there. We're seeing that as a weakness again for Carlos in the Williams against Alex Albon. But what Carlos does brilliantly is pull that back, turn 12, 13, 14, and so on, and finish the lap 0.3 better. So it's very straightforward for Alex to know where that is. And it's also very, it stacks up for Carlos that he does have a bit of work to do in 9 and 10, the fast left to right chicane, where he's getting swallowed by Alex and he was getting swallowed by Max as well. Let's have a look and see what's going on just in these last two corners if we can. I suspect it's just Carlos getting to full throttle earlier, and he definitely is here. And which corners is it exactly? So I think it's 13 and out of 14 as well. So the delta takes a really big jump here. I think this is Carlos just carrying more speed into the tight left-hander, this one here, and really just hooking up with it a lot better as well. We saw Oscar Piastri in the second session turn in a little bit too early into this turn 14 tight left-hander and have to open the steering wheel and return in again. Such is the extra front grip of the McLaren. So if you can time the turn in correctly into 14 and turn in once and stay with that, then look at the extra speed that you can carry into turn 14. Obviously, that's helpful on the run through the final corner as well. Now, where was the other delta jump here where Carlos seemed to carry a lot more speed on the way in here? You can see he's just braking so much later into this corner. And this is turn 12, the heavy braking tight right-hander. Carlos driving clean past Alex Albon's braking point and just carrying so much more speed in. So two slightly different things. Yes, braking later here into turn 12, carrying more speed in, but also carrying more speed in here into turn 14 as well. So that's our telemetry comparison for FP1. Now on FP2, it was really interesting to see Lewis Hamilton's father just have a word with Lewis before FP2. I'm not sure if you guys saw that as well. It was just a last minute, very quick tap on the shoulder, probably some motivation, probably words to the effect of, remember who you are. You can do this, Lewis. Go out and do what we spoke about. It would be some sort of words of motivation. Lewis nods his head and goes, yep, don't worry. Interesting on two fronts. And we always cover the technical, tactical, and mental. And this falls in the mental category on this channel. It was interesting on two fronts. Interesting that Anthony felt the need to do it, but also interesting that Lewis feels the need it as well. Like after 7 titles and all the success, and Lewis is still, in my opinion, searching for 100% self-confidence and self-reassurance. I think since 2021, and I've got a video out on this and I'll put a link in the description below, but I think since 2021 that he took a massive hit in terms of self-confidence, self-doubt, and self-belief that he's been slowly trying to restore. Never really fully restored that at Mercedes, but now he's moved to Ferrari. He's trying to build that up. He's got Angela back in there as well. He's got his dad at the track. So he's trying to find the solution to this self-confidence. But I would, if I was asking Lewis, I would say, where does this come from? Where has this self-doubt and self-confidence come from? You've won everything there is to win. Back yourself and get out there. But obviously that's easier said than done, right? So I thought I'd call that out. Just interesting to see Lewis's father, Anthony Hamilton, in there. And the guy's a legend. He's one of the guys I'd love to meet one day. I've met my childhood hero, Roger Federer. The second person on my list that I would love to meet one day would be Anthony Hamilton. Now, let's talk about Max Verstappen for a minute. I think he was overdriving a lot in the second practice session. A lot of shaking of the head, similar to what we saw in Bahrain as well. A lot of extra steering work going into the car that I don't think needs to go into the car. We saw him have a slide on the exit of turn 1. We saw him have another slide, I think, on the entry into turn 3. And there's tailwind down there, Max. So he just needs to be a little bit more patient, it's the start of a new championship. He doesn't need to come out and win like he's used to. Max is going to have to get familiar with and get re-familiar with and re-used to just, driving the car at limit and not asking too much of it and not expecting too much of it too soon, too quickly. I think there's been a bit of frustration since the back end of 2024 where the car fell away and he just hung on to that title. But now I think that's carried into 2025. You guys have seen my predictions video where I think it's going to be rocky roads for Red Bull and Max this season. And I think it's going to be a fight between McLaren and Ferrari. But Max needs to just dial it back to 100 and bring it back from 110 to 100. Just drive the car for what it is. And he does need to take a bit of a mindset shift. I think he's overdriving, to be honest. So he's asking too much of the car. It was a beautiful piece of correction at turn 1. Great anticipation from Max. He knew that if he put that much steering and asked that much of the car, he'd probably have to put a little bit of opposite lock into it. So I'd like to see Max just like lower the expectations and find a bit more happiness in just being at Red Bull, competing again for another title, building a championship. Like, he doesn't need to win Melbourne this one. In fact, last year he retired with the brake issue. So if he can just come home in 3rd and 4th and just build, Max needs to try and take that approach. And I'm not sure if he has it at the moment. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about that one. If I'm reading it wrong, if you guys think he's not overdriving and the car just looks out of shape, let me know as well. But I think from what I see, Max is better than that. I think Max can extract more from that Red Bull if he asks less from the car. Now, look, just to follow up on that, turn 3, we had Lando with some over rotation at turn 3, Leclerc with over rotation at turn 3. We had Gasly struggle to break that car into turn 3. And then following on from Max at turn 3 as well, there was a tailwind into turn 1 and turn 3 in FP2. So that's reassurance in what I'm saying. All the guys are struggling there. Max doesn't need to be frustrated and, he doesn't need to take that so seriously. It's just, okay, there's a bit of wind, I'll adjust, and adapt. He needs to be more compliant, more malleable. Let's take a look at the FP2 results. As you can see, topped by Charles Leclerc and followed strongly by the McLarens very close in this session. Piastri this time getting the upper hand on Norris. Now I'm keen to see if all of the separation that happened with the teammates in the first session, if any of it resolved for the second session. So we're looking at Leclerc, Hamilton. Yes, Hamilton has found his way up there. Not completely up there, but only now 4/10 off Leclerc. So that's a better showing in the second practice from Hamilton. We've got Verstappen and Lawson still with a big separation. So Liam Lawson got a lot of work to do to try to pull that around. And likewise, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli still with a decent separation as well. It's 4/10 here from Russell to Antonelli. And between Lawson and Verstappen, it's 6/10. And it's actually 4/10 still between Leclerc and Hamilton as well. So I think the biggest difference, therefore, is going to be between Verstappen and Lawson. So let's have a look at them in the telemetry. But just before we do, I'm going to have a look at the FP2 top speeds and see if anyone's cleaned up their act there. So Ferrari, again, still in the same position there. I'm not sure whether they want to dial out a little bit. No, they seem actually not too bad. 323. Compared to the top guys, 326, 328, and so on, 324, is not a million miles off where it needs to be. So you don't need to overreact. I mean, the table looks like very spread out, but it's not. Now you got Lando up here with 334. I suspect that was a slipstream. I'm hoping that was a slipstream. Otherwise, that's mega speed. But look, you got a Ferrari 323, a Mercedes 323, a McLaren 323, and Verstappen and Lawson, again, with the highest top speeds, 324. So look, there's not much in it in FP2. So I don't think anyone needs to react. Actually, now that I look at the FP2 and I've had a look at the numbers, I don't think anyone really needs to react to this. The worst is 322. The best is, if we take out the top two having a slipstream, the best is 326. They're all there or thereabouts. I don't think if it's a dry session, of course, and just with the dry hat on, I don't think anyone really needs to do too much there. Let's do what we said and have a look at the difference here between the 17.6 and the 17.0 between Lawson and Verstappen. Where is this time being lost? I can see it straight away. turn 6, Max is carrying a lot more speed through the apex of turn 6 and holding on to that advantage down the straight. That's the first piece, because up to turn 6, they're actually pretty close. 0.046, there's nothing in it. But then after turn 6, it's 2.5 tenths. So you can see on the track map, the blue track dominance of Verstappen getting a mega run. So I don't think that's too difficult for Lawson to clean up. It's a confidence thing. He just needs to literally throw the car at turn 6 and open the steering on the exit and bury his foot. I think that's a very non-technical corner. It's just a confidence corner, really, and where Liam's given up 2.5 tenths. But I think here there's another decent delta jump as well, and we really need to hone in. Okay, so that's the braking into turn 12, I believe. So that's where it's going to be more challenging for Liam to not only to carry more speed in, but brake later. It's always a challenge if you're not that confident. So Max, as you can see in the throttle, clean driving past Liam Lawson's braking point, very similar to what we saw with Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. So those are the only two areas, luckily for Liam. It's not like he needs to clean up a whole bunch. You know, he's losing nearly 3 tenths through the run down to turn 6, losing nearly another 3 tenths through turn 12 under braking, and that's it. So, you know, when you look at it like that, it's not that much work that he needs to do. Through turn 11 and 12, thankfully, which is the really, not 11 and 12, sorry, it's the old 11 and 12. I keep getting confused. Through turn 9 and 10, the fast chicane where Bearman crashed, there's nothing in it. So thankfully for Liam, he's actually okay. If we zoom in and have a look at the speeds, yeah, sure, Max is a little bit higher in the middle, but largely the delta remains unchanged and there's nothing to worry about through that really high speed, quick direction change, fully loaded, committed, and so on. So that would really be hard to resolve for. But Liam carry a bit more speed in 6 and brake a little bit later into turn 12. I can't see why Liam wouldn't be able to do that and close that gap to Max Verstappen tomorrow. So looking forward, the $1 million question, do you adjust this setup, add more downforce on, and try to make a wet setup out of it? I'd say no, for 2 reasons. The first reason is if you do add more downforce on, you've seen how close the top speeds are. That might cost you positions in qualifying. It's not like you're going to be able to just add your downforce on and maintain your qualifying position. No, you're going to take a grid drop for that in the hope that that works in the race. So that's the first risk in the rain, is that you're going to be qualifying deeper in the pack than what you would like. You're in the melee, then you're in the mix. Potentially you're in the carbon wars there in turn 1 and turn 3 in the wet. I wouldn't be doing it. Actually, I would even argue the reverse should be true. You want to get as far out of that as possible and take as much wing off as possible to get as high up the grid as possible. So you've got the clean air, you're out of the mess, you can see where you're driving in the wet. That's a lot more important than having a little bit more rear wing on. That's number 1. Now, number 2, if I can just jump over to the whiteboard and show you guys exactly what I showed you yesterday. This is not necessarily a track that's conducive to like putting rear wing on and getting heaps of benefit out of it. What you need is like increasing radius corners to really take advantage of rear wing. Increasing radius corners being like we have at turn, I think it's 11 in Bahrain, where Antonelli was using all the entry curb here, and you're on throttle driving through this corner. Let's say it's 200K or I don't know, 150 to 200 minimum. That's where a rear wing is going to help you. Firstly, we don't have any increasing radius corners of this type in Melbourne. Secondly, we've got a few slow speed corners here with slow minimum speeds where I don't feel like the rear wing is going to be even doing that much anyway in the wet. Now, these dry speeds are 90 kilometers, apex speed, 85, 125 and 135. You can imagine what these are going to be in the wet. If I just grab my blue pen, this could be, you know, could be half those speeds. You could be looking at 50 Ks down here. You could be looking at 90 here. You could be looking at 45 to 50 here. And you could be looking at 90 Ks, something like that. So by you adding rear wing, you are certainly going to pay the penalty down the straight, but you're not necessarily going to be gaining advantage when the downforce is not active through those types of corners. So I just wanted to call that out to you. It's not something I'd be doing. I'd be leaving the dry setup, at least from an aerodynamic point of view, completely on the car. Maybe you want to make a few changes to things like toe out, a little bit more to give you a little bit more temperature and grip in the wet and so on, provided it doesn't cost you that much in the dry. That's my only proviso and only condition. I don't see it worth it. I don't see it feasible. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you had a thought, question, leave it in the comments section for me below. Definitely subscribe to this channel moving forward. I'm going to be putting out more insights like this after qualifying and after the race as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.